Hi, friends. Welcome to the show. Today we have a very special and amazing guest. We have Kevin Bannerman. Kevin is an independent studio producer and former studio executive for Disney Feature Animation and Fox Family Films. Kevin is known for developing supervised producer on Anastasia, Ice Age, and many others, including Ever After, A Cinderella Story. Let's welcome Kevin to the show. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, Marilyn. Hi, it's so nice to be here. I'm so excited.
Yeah, our audience is so excited to hear all about your wonderful producing and working at, the amazing Disney and Fox family. So where are you recording live with us today?
I am actually in the beautiful area of Silver Lake in Los Angeles, and I love my neighborhood so much. It's just spectacular, and I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, yeah, and it is a beautiful, cloudy day all day in LA, but the sun is now poking out. And Kevin, I want to ask you, you work in animation, but when you were a little kid, did you have a favorite film growing up that you just loved?
So I had a bazillion favorite movies when I was a kid because my parents would throw the four boys into the back of the station wagon and go to the drive-in. So I grew up like going to the movies all the time. And I remember seeing like the Doris Day movies in the drive-in and going to the movie matinees where they would raffle off prizes and things like that. So I would say as a kid, a movie that I discovered when I was maybe 11 years old that I became completely obsessed with was Damn Yankees. With Gwen Verdon, Tab Hunter, and so in LA back in the day, they had what they called the $1 Million Movie, and they would run the same movie Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights, and then twice on Saturday and twice on Sunday. And that's where I saw the movie. Obsessed with it, and I would, if I couldn't get my brothers to watch it, and they kind of liked it, which was kind of odd because it was a musical, but it was about baseball, so they kind of went with it. But if I couldn't get them to watch it as much as I wanted to, I would go to my neighbors and talk my neighborhood friends into watching it so I could see it again. And by last count, I'd say I'd seen the movie 65 times. I tried to count once, so I'd never get tired of it. And it became in a great way, like it became a formative movie for me. And that I think it was like the first musical that I saw that I got obsessed with to the point that I started to understand how music worked with storytelling. And I really love that. And to this day, like one of the things I do as a volunteer is I sit on a ASCAP musical theater panel and for these original musicals that are being written, and we listen and review them and talk about them. And my fallback classic example of a great piece of story structure is actually Damn Yankees, because as I grew up and I began to analyze stories and work on stories, I realized like Damn Yankees, which may not be the funniest or most original story, but it is a beautifully set up story. It sets up its dilemma in the beginning. It sets up a protagonist. It gives you somebody to root for. It throws obstacles in the way, and it takes you to just a classic end of second act dilemma where all is lost for the hero, and then it resolves it all in the third act. And it's just so beautifully laid out. And so I literally will say in these panels, like for me, all roads lead to Damn Yankees. And it's so
I love it. And I have to ask you, did you play baseball?
I was definitely not what you would call an athletic kid. And my dad and my brother signed me up for Little League one year, and it was kind of a disaster. So I don't really talk about that very much.
But you love the characters in there. Did you love the songs or the dancing, or what appealed to you? Like, I mean, were you singing the songs that you went there that many times? I mean, that's just fascinating.
Yeah, well, first off, there was this amazing creature named Gwen Verdon. And Gwen Verdon, for anyone who's never seen Gwen Verdon, you might have seen actually the series Fosse Verdon that was on Fox last year or the year before. for which Michelle Williams did an absolutely brilliant performance as Gwen Verdon. They don't really touch on this movie very, very little, because it was the bulk of the story comes in their later years. But Bob Fosse choreographed and the movie and the stage show, and it's actually where he met Gwen Verdon. And Gwen was this just amazing performer. She was a great dancer. She had danced with Jack Cole, who was one of the premier choreographers of the screen Hollywood in the 40s and 50s. And she met Bob Fosse, and she started dancing with Bob, and she was just a phenomenal, the classic, perfect Bob Fosse dancer. And he really helped to make her a star. They actually met on Pajama Game on Broadway. And it turns out, oddly enough, as I grew up and I met other gay guys who had grown up watching Damn Yankees, they were equally obsessed with Gwen Verdon. So there was this whole community of people who loved her. So that was part of it. And then I love the score. It's a great score by Jerry Adler and Richard Ross, I think it is. And great songs that people know. Whatever Lola Wants, Once a Year Day, Steam Heat. Like they were great catchy melodies from a classic era of songwriting. And I became obsessed that I had the soundtrack, and I loved that soundtrack. Even to the point that once I had a fight with my brother and I threw the record at him, and it chipped. I got in some kind of fight with one of my brothers, and I threw the album at him, and the record chipped. And I still would listen to it and just would skip over that much of the orchestra of the overture where the record was chipped. But I love it, and like I said, it was somehow became that touchstone for me. I knew musicals. We'd seen the Doris Day movies. I remember as a kid going to a double feature one day of Gypsy and The Music Man, and like that certainly had an impact on me. So I've always loved musicals. And then weirdly enough, my love of musicals and of theater stuff paid off when I was hired at Disney in their feature animation department, because they wanted someone who knew musicals. And I was able to match my love of storytelling with my love of musicals.
Yeah, so, that's amazing. I love Doris Day too. Oh my God. And the Elvis movies, like, really fun times. And I love that you had drive-ins back then. And during COVID, I think they like kind of made drive-ins popular again.
Yeah, drive-ins are a lost art. It's a lost event. And I was so happy during COVID. And I actually went to a few during COVID. And it's for us, like I remember when I was a kid at drive-ins, they had swing sets and playgrounds right underneath the screen. So parents would pack their kids in. We would be in our pajamas mostly, run out, play on the swing sets, and until the movie started, and we'd run and get in the car and watch the movie. And I remember, I have fuzzy memories of watching Pillow Talk with Doris Day, but I have very clear memories of watching Please Don't Eat the Daisies at the drive-in. Because that was a movie about a woman who was kind of glamorous, because Doris Day was kind of glamorous, who had 4 sons, and we had 4 boys in our family, and my mom was kind of glamorous. So that was a movie as a family, we really related to that movie.
What beautiful memories. Absolutely stunning memories. I can't believe there was a swing set. Like, I don't know which one you went to, but you went to a drive-in theater that sounds super cool. And you even said they had raffles.
Yeah, the raffles were at the matinee movies. So I was a little kid. We lived in Salina, Kansas, and that's where we went to the drive-in. And they had 3 theaters in the town, and we would go to the movies and the matinees. And interestingly enough, after my mom passed away, I went back to Salina because we had home movies of where we lived. So I actually found the house and where it was in proximity to the downtown area and the movie theaters. And one of the movie theaters was torn down. One has become an accountant's office, but they kept the marquee and the big sign out in front saying it was the Vogue Theater, but they have an accountant's name on the marquee now. But the other theater, which was the Fox Theater, is now a landmark, and it's been a theater that's been restored. They do live performances there, beautifully restored, and it's great to see that.
Oh, wow. What special memories. You found the house that you grew up in. and and the theaters is one's an accountant and one's an actual theater. That's beautiful. I mean, what treasured memories as a kid growing up, because movies have such an impact when you're a kid.
Right?
Yeah. And it reminds you of growing up, and it does bring good memories of your mom, your dad, your brother and sisters. The good, the bad, and the ugly, but mostly I think the fun memories of going to the movie with a parent or
oh my gosh, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I remember in one of those theaters, and we moved from there when I was 7, so I couldn't have been older than that. It's probably 6. I remember going to one of those theaters and being in the lobby. Oh, it's funny how you remember I was arguing with this little girl who I knew. To this day, I have no idea who it was. But I remember us being in some kind of argument, and then the cartoon started, and all arguments were forgotten as we rushed down to the front and plopped in the front row and watched the cartoon. And those are the memories that I love about going to the movies.
Yeah. Wow. And you grew up in Kansas, right? So, wow. And you went in the station wagon with your 3 brothers. What was your favorite spot at the movie theater? Were you the middle person or on the side or a very front row?
I tended to go down. I didn't like the front row because it was hard to get a little bit of perspective, but I never understood people who sat in the back. It was just like, you're not in the movie if you're sitting in the back of the theater. So I would go about maybe a third of the way from the screen, enough so that the screen felt like I was immersed in the movie, but I could get the whole picture. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I always tried to like the side plan so no one would sit in front of me. You know, that tall person that sits in front of me.
Yeah, wow. See, I would look at people on the side and go, you're not really seeing the movie in the right perspective. Even as a little kid, I would question people who sat on the side.
Well, I guess I didn't like being people. I would be claustrophobic, and that way I could just run out if I needed to.
No, I get that. And I get wanting to be away from the main crowd where someone could sit in front of you and block the screen, because that drives me crazy. That does drive me crazy. And I have, I can pinpoint the exact favorite seat of mine in the center of a dome, which I keep my fingers crossed will reopen. But I will tell you exactly where I buy my seat, which is 3 rows from the back, smack center. I think it's row AA, seat 23.
I love it. I love it. I know. And everyone's just so excited to go back to the movie theaters. I'm going to ask you, was there a favorite Criterion movie that you liked as well that perhaps maybe inspired you to go on your career path?
So I looked through the Criterion list, and it's an amazing amount of movies. And there are directors there from Hitchcock to Sturges to Ozu to Buñuel to Demi that I just worship and that absolutely influenced me. But I will say there's 2 movies, one that absolutely influenced me and one that is emblematic of the movies I loved as a kid. So, and I know no one will mention this movie, so I happily mentioned Fiend Without a Face.
No one has. Fiend Without a Face? I don't even think I know what that one is, which is, gosh, I'm so excited. I'm going to go watch it tonight then.
It is a very cheesy 1958 horror movie. And it's about some aliens with some atomic powers come and they suck the spine and the brain right out of you. And if they have enough power, the spine and the brain actually take on a life of their own, and they skill. I love this movie. So the spine, it's like a brain, and the spine is sort of their base, and it scoots around, and it will jump up and strangle you with the spine.
Oh my God.
And it has 2 little antennas on the brain, and it's directed by a guy named Arthur Crabtree, who was a DP and then went on to direct a bunch of really cheesy horror movies. But as a kid, aside from the musicals, the movies I loved so much were the horror movies. And Fiend Without a Face was a movie that would come on TV, it would come on Chiller on Sunday afternoons, or it would be on the middle of the night late, and we'd stay up and watch it. And it was, a black and white kind of a cheesy movie. But movies like that, which I actually own the Criterion disc. That's how much I love this movie. And the cast is sort of nobodies, but again, very emblematic of the movies that we would watch on Sunday afternoons and love, things that are so obscure now and so bad when I watched them. I remember a movie, and I can't remember the name of it now, but it was about a tree in a village, and it had voodoo powers, and it would pick up the beautiful women and throw them in quicksand.
Oh.
And like, what the heck? But it was a movie that I loved as a kid, and so those were very. And then in that sort of universe, there was a movie called Them about giant ants that attack Los Angeles, and that was probably the high end version of those movies, and it's actually quite good. It actually holds up well, I think. And it was a movie, one of two movies that my dad made us sit down and watch together as a family, and so I'm particularly attached to that movie. But Thing Without a Face on the Criterion Collection is one of my favorites, and I'm going to sneak a second title in, if I may, that did certainly influence me, and that was Truffaut's Day for Night.
Oh, yeah, beautiful.
I saw that in college. Do you know that movie?
Yes. Oh, yes.
So, yeah, so great, so great. And I saw it in college, and I saw it with my friend Colleen, and my friend Colleen was one of the people I met in college who really was brilliant at breaking down and analyzing movies and telling me what they were about. A Day for Night was just a movie about the sheer love of movie making, and I watched that and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to be in this. I have to be doing that with my life someday. And I wanted to act when I was a kid, and that was totally not to be in a bus, because I was kind of actually a crappy actor. But I was able to get in behind the scenes and find this whole other path. And so I actually have, in my lifetime, experienced what I saw on screen in Day for Night. And boy, was that a movie that had a huge influence. And I can quote lines on it. I just love it. It's a great, great movie. That's Francois Truffaut.
Yeah, he's amazing too. And isn't it kind of like a musical too, or was that the other one?
It's not a musical. Jacques Demy did the musicals like Umbrellas of Cherbourg, which is exquisite, and Les Demoiselles de Rochefort, the Young Girls of Rochefort. But Truffaut, it was just a movie about making a movie. It was Jacqueline Bisset, who was so beautiful, and Natalie Baye was in it, who went on to do like a major French actress. In fact, she's even in the French series Call My Agent on Netflix, which is great. But it just, I just looked at that. I said, I want that. I want to be making movies. I want to see what that's like and be with that crew and be a part of that experience. And so, yeah, it had a very, very big influence on setting a vision for what I wanted my life to be.
So I'm going to ask you, so you're in Kansas, and then did you go to college? Like, how did you go from college, Kansas, to Los Angeles and then start your career path?
So actually, my dad was in the Air Force. So we lived in Kansas, and then from Kansas, we moved to Virginia. From Virginia, we lived out here in El Segundo because he was at the El Segundo Air Force Base. And then from El Segundo, we moved to Ohio, where he was head of ROTC at a college there. So I actually went to college in Ohio and then Indiana University, when he went down there. And then when I finished college, I came back to LA, which really was always considered my home base. I spent the wonder years out here, literally from when I was 8 till I was 16, before we moved back to Ohio. So I just always wanted to come back to LA. Like I said, I wanted to be an actor. I was obsessed with being a movie star, as so many people are. And I came out here and I took acting lessons and I did theater, and I just really was not a very good actor. But until I figured that out, at one point, I'd done shows with a really good friend of mine, Denise, and she had a brother who knew a woman named Carolyn, and Carolyn worked at MGM as an assistant to Richard Benjamin. He was just in pre-production at the time on My Favorite Year. And Carolyn was great, and she said, oh, you should come and work at MGM because they want to hire guys right now. So the way MGM worked at the time, this was 1980. So they actually had a secretary pool, and you had to do shorthand and typing, and you would come in and you would go into this room and report to this guy named Frank, who was head of the secretary's pool, and he would assign you to offices where maybe there was someone out sick or someone on vacation, and you would go and sit in on that desk for a day or a week, and then go back in the pool, and if there were no assignments, you would type scripts. And then you could bid on jobs. So if, let's say, a producer came on the lot and they needed an assistant, they would post the job and you could bid on the job, go in and interview. And that's kind of how the lot worked. So I didn't know shorthand at all. And Carolyn, bless her heart, gave me a copy of the shorthand test or what would be dictated. Again, so it proves right now, like, it's not always what you know, it's who you know. And Carolyn arranged for me to go in and meet Frank, and I interviewed with Frank and had a great interview. And then he dictated a letter to me, and it was exactly what Carolyn had given me. So then they put you in a separate room and you have to type up the letter. So I just went into this room and they closed the door, and I took the letter out of my pocket that Carolyn had given me, and I typed up that letter and because I could type. And I went back to Frank, and he was very impressed with how good my shorthand was, how well I took dictation. And he hired me, and I was the second person in the history of MGM by one day, the second man to be hired as a secretary. And I worked for like a week or two, like filling in, and then they put me onto the office for Pennies from Heaven, which was in pre-production.
Wow.
And, yeah. And I was supposed to be there for a week, and I was typing up, oh boy, this was fun. I had to type up Herbert Ross's, the director's, new phone directory. And I had to call the homes of all these movie stars and confirm that their phone number and addresses were correct. And I was just terrified to do that. I remember calling Goldie Hawn's Malibu home thinking Goldie Hawn would answer the phone. Ha 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 ha. But yeah, exactly. I'm like, I'm just calling to confirm this is the number, and they would confirm it, and then I, would type it up. And then at the end of the week, and I really liked, like, it was a cool vibe in the office. They hadn't got the green light on the movie yet, but they were starting to talk serious casting. And I'd seen Herbert's movies and I knew them, and Herbert was kind of a little bit aloof, but treated me well. And the other people in the office were good. His wife, Nora Kay, was there. She never treated me very well. But she was a prima ballerina. And the other person in the office who was amazing was a woman, I want to say her name is Shirley. Gosh, I just blanked on it. Brown. And she was the inspiration for the Anne Bancroft character. No, the Shirley MacLaine character in Turning Point. She had been a ballerina with Nora Kay and had chosen being a parent and raising a family over a career as a prima ballerina, and Nora had gone on and done that. And their Turning Point was kind of their story. And she was great. And her son worked on the lot, Kevin Brown. I became good friends with him too. And so at the end of that first week, I remember I baked a cake and I put little pennies on it, and I wrote in, thank you for the week, pennies from Kevin.
Oh my gosh, that is so cute.
Right? And they were so like, oh, googly over that they kept me on for another 7 weeks. And that was really lovely. So that was my first real full-time job working in the business.
Oh my gosh. Like, what an extraordinary, like, a magical, like, pennies from heaven. Like, that would be forever treasured. Did you get to see the set, the filming on the set and everything in there, or how?
Sorry. So by the time they shot the movie, I was no longer working there. The actor strike of 1980 hit, and I got laid off. But then they brought me back after the strike, but then put me on another assignment. But yes, I did get to go on to a couple of the sets. The schoolroom set where they did the big tap numbers with the kids, and then the beautiful, unbelievably gorgeous reproduction of the number from Swing Time, which they recreated just perfectly. And that was Bernadette and Steve Martin, Bernadette Peters and Steve Martin performing, and I got to watch that for a while. And I have to say, like, forever after, when I would run into Herbert, he would always say hello to me, always very friendly. Nora never was friendly to me at all.
Oh.
But Herbert was always nice.
We'd love to hear, we love to hear that because, like, I mean, the fans, if it wasn't for your fans, the fans have to like what you do. But gosh, and like there's so much work behind the scenes. Like I think the people that work for the producers really do so much work. Like you said, the typing, the assistants, and like the whole team that it takes. There's so many people that it takes to make a movie, but it seems like whoever
So true.
it seems like whoever gets their face on camera gets like, gets that red carpet love.
Yeah, it's very true. The assistants don't get a lot of love, and they are really holding things together. A production team, a production office, just they work from 9 in the morning till 7 or 8 at night at least, and they're long days. And depending on who your boss is, they can be brutal days or they can be great days. And I was lucky enough at MGM to end up working for a vice president. So I spent like nine months maybe working for TV star Larry Wilcox, who was on Chipston. I worked for him, and he was really, really nice until one day he wasn't. And then I went to work for the vice president.
You're like, I gotta go.
Yeah, he had some issues.
No.
But up until then, he'd been great. He'd actually been a really super nice guy. But then I started work for a vice president named Lynn Arist, and Lynn absolutely became my mentor. And I was her assistant for maybe 2.5 years. And she worked under Freddie Fields, who was the head of the studio then. So when Freddie went into independent production, he made Lynn a VP in his company. And Lynn, just went to bat and fought for me and got me promoted from off the assistant's desk into a creative executive position. And I would not have had my career at all if it had not been for Lynn. She absolutely was a great mentor, and I learned a lot from her. And because I had studied acting, I knew how to read scripts. I knew how to look for good dialogue. I knew how to look for authentic dialogue. And she saw that, and I went the extra mile. I read scripts, I did coverage for her, and she got me promoted into my first exec position, and it was fantastic.
Kevin, we're gonna end part 1 here, and I'm gonna ask the audience, come back for part 2, because I want to take everyone from how Kevin Brannon went from being a secretary, the second male secretary, right, at MGM?
Yes.
The second male secretary, to being a producer, and how a female helped you get your first executive role. So let's do part 2. So everyone coming back to part 2. Thank you for joining us, and please come back for part 2 with Kevin Bannerman.
Bannerman, thank you.
Come back. We'll be right back.